we're working in a circle. You guys have already figured that out, and I'm supposed to be moderating it, but I'm finding myself wanting to take notes on a wall. And so we're moving it around. Have you had a chance yet, Kate, to introduce yourself? Okay, please do.
Thank you. Hello, Bishop. Just started a job up at the Ferndale Community Services, but I've been volunteering there for over 5 years now. And we just started a severe weather shelter in Ferndale last winter that we're just getting ready to kind of get everything in place for doing it again this year right now. Just to share, I was homeless for a couple of weeks, really, just in 2019. I had already worked with, the Sun House in the past, and and also the Oasis Teen Shelter in Mount Vernon, and I had experience working in that, but that was my first experience, on the other end of that. So it really, I was fortunate enough that, it was summertime, and found some supportive people to help me out, and had some family help me out. But I know not everyone has that position. And so kind of last year we've been trying to get a shelter going for a lot of years to get the city to do it, and ended up just doing it ourselves last year. So, just kind of, so our goal this year is to kind of get the word out more, and serve more people, and figure out how we can make it more accessible and everything. So anyway, it's kind of a rambly introduction, but that's me. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate. This is Joy again. Alona, you introduced yourself?
No. So, hi. I'm Ilona Krohn. I'm from Germany, and I met Joy and Irene online at the beginning of this year, and their passion just really inspired me, and so I felt I needed to come here to see what they were doing and to connect to Whatcom County and Bellingham. My background is economics, and I really am very passionate about the fact that we need a new way of money flowing to people and through people. And so I did a presentation earlier this week about how the economy is not working and why it's not working. And I will be doing a number of talks and discussions and presentations about how it might work in the future. So thank you.
Irene, have you introduced yourself yet?
No, not to the group.
Okay.
Irene Morgan. I am just so very blown away by this 5th day of this conference. Bless Joy, bless everyone that's been involved with it, and thank you for all the support behind us to bring this forward. This is one of my dreams come true, to be able to share this with more than just a few people that get it. There's many, many more of us that get it, and now's the time to really put energy and resources behind this, because the way we're living now is not sustainable and or respectful to a very large segment of our society. So thank you so much for being open-minded enough to join us and to be one of those helpers. I started the coalition as the Whatcom County Reentry Coalition in 2006, helping people return from prison, and learned very quickly that it wasn't nearly what as large as it should be, the scope. So that's what we've grown into. And Joy joined us in 2010, along with Debbie David, who are board members, and Joy's the president. And there's been so many people, there's been hundreds of people show up, and for whatever reason wasn't able to sustain whatever the growth that we were doing. So again, dreams come true, goals are met, and we have many, many more. Thank you so much.
Okay, I am going to step in. First of all, I need a co-host key because we have people in the waiting room and nobody is taking care of the business. So let me take care of this, but I need the co-host key. And my name is Kasia. I'm Polish, living in United States, in Washington State. And I'm excited by being a part of this project and helping those beautiful souls, those beautiful girls from Bellingham, and then Ilona with what this big operation is. I mean, I'm blown away with the passion and everything what they do. So again, I'm happy to be here. Thank you again.
Yeah, and I'm going to speak now. My name is Joy Gilfillan. We've convened this meeting. I'm president of the Restorative Community Coalition, and I apologize for the fact that we're going to be moving the room around a little bit because I want to be able to have Ilona. It's easier for us to talk because my goal today is to draw maps, like little diagrams on this wall, and to take notes on these papers. And we had a problem just getting ourselves linked up on the computer this morning. But Ilona's going to manage the room. There's people in here working with us in person. And the goal today, just as people are getting, you can bring your chairs up so that we have a nice circle. And then people can stand around the outside if they don't want to be part of the video. And if they do want to be, that's perfect. So here's the goal today for the first few hours. We're starting at 10, which is now. And the goal is to gather the stories and the real world experiences from the people who have been living homeless in the streets and the people who have been volunteering to help the people who are living and homeless. It's an interesting thing. Most people that are following legal guidelines, they will often say that you know, if you're living in your car, or if you're living in a tent, or if you're living, you know, on somebody's couch, that you're not homeless, because they changed the legal definition of homelessness a few years ago. But the truth is that there are many people who are unhoused, and there are many people living in tents and on the streets and in their cars and in junk, you know, trailers that are broken down in the corner that people like who are of privilege call junk, but they're a house. You know, we actually had a group of students from Western a few years ago do a presentation to us at the Whatcom County Library System in Bellingham. And they did 5 different kinds of solutions that could be done to solve homelessness. It was interesting. Their idea was to build a botel, which was basically where you could take property that was industrial property down by the marinas, and you could take these old dead boats that don't float anymore, but they could be onto a gravel parking lot or next to the marina, and they're shelter. And we could actually have people living inside these boats, away and protected from the weather. But what we would need to do would put, you know, some of a unit where you could have people have a kitchen, have a place to wash their clothes, have a place to get together and provide services, etc. And that was one of the solutions, and it was really well documented, and it's incredible. It was this was the homeless project. It was done by a gentleman up at Western, 2 gentlemen actually that ran college classes to figure out how to do that. They also figured out how they could have taken a motel that has since been torn down on Samish Way, and it could have been turned into a homeless housing shelter type place. Another one was the idea of having a parking lot where people could live in, they could bring their cars, they could live on the site. And all we needed to have, again, was a place to commune, a place to be able to go to the bathroom, a place to be able to take showers or eat or, be safe. There's actually a homeless group that was done by I believe it was Unitarian Fellowship that we went down to and we visited down in North Seattle or Linwood area at one point. And they were allowing car camping at night. And for a period of time, it was Edmonds. And the church had figured out how they could have the bathrooms open and the facility open and people could come in and live there. And they figured out a way to negotiate with the police and with the people in the community, the neighborhood. And they found that was a very good way of being able to provide shelter. So one of the things that happened on that particular day is when we were talking about it and it was being proposed, there were 5 different ideas. All of them were being proposed. But the interesting thing was that the administration of the city stood up and said, the problem with funding or doing any of these things is that if we do them, then we will be less likely to get funding from the feds and less funding for building low-income housing and stuff. And and doing their project. And Irene and I just sat there and we looked at it and we went, what is that? I mean, that's just nuts. And then people proposed having some of the people who were living in the streets being able to help clean up the city and get rewards, get benefits and get, be able to move up a ladder and get credit for doing volunteer work. And the rebuttal that came back to us at the time was, oh, we can't do that because if we do that, then we're going to be taking away jobs from people who are employed by the city. And I'm sitting here going, what is this? I mean, this is just nuts. Because the problem is that the city wasn't doing the work to clean up the camps and they weren't doing these things. So how are we but the problem was union problems. Okay. They said it would be a union problem. So these are the things that got Irene and I really stirred up around the homeless issues here in Bellingham. And we started really looking at this. This was 2015 or 2016. This was quite a few years ago. It was 13 or 14. It was 13 or 14. Okay. So this has been a boiling problem that is in Whatcom County for real. So what we're doing today is we want to be able to listen to you. I'm not going to stand here and talk about all the problems that we have in the community because I know a whole pile of them, but that doesn't matter. What matters is whether we know the problems that you're actually dealing with. And so one of the things we're going to do is we're going to have Lorelei be able to work with us. Did you introduce yourself yet to people? I don't think you have. I'd like you to introduce yourself because you are, I mean, I know you're shy, but tell us anyway. Can you see yourself?
I don't want to see myself.
But okay. Well, then I'll have you hold it. Okay.
Let's switch it off because we've got a weak signal anyway. So video is okay.
Okay.
That should feel better.
Hey. So I'm Lorelei Bowers, and I'm how do I introduce? I don't know.
You're with Bridge to Services?
I'm with Bridge to Services, and we began kind of what Lydia did a great job of explaining it. We started with laundry and different things. Got a really cool meal train happening after J28. It's just been evolving from there to where we were helping with propane through the winter, and just it's kind of hard to put into a sentence what happens. We just kind of building relationships though is the most important thing. It's like we're just people helping people. We're not like there to save anybody or nothing like that. It's just I was unhoused. I've been there. I was a teen on the streets, and then in my 20s, I decided to intentionally be unhoused because it was a lot more free. And then I lived in a school bus and been in a tent. You know, I've lived in affordable housing. I've experienced all the different things. So I'm not saying I'm any different. I'm just privileged right now at this moment to be able to tap into system services. And I want to use that privilege to bring those services to people who want them. And also to help people get connected to peace in themselves. That's my ultimate personal goal. I'm not about trying to get a person into a house. And when I say that, some people are like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm more about how do you find peace with wherever you are? You don't need to leave a tent to have dignity. And that's for me where I'm at.
Very good. So the reason I wanted Lorelei to speak is because one of the things that we're going to do in the room, and there are others in the room that do want to speak, we're inviting you to do so. Yeah, can you speak to it?
Oh my.
Can you go ahead and turn on the camera for him so he can.
I thought this was voice only.
Do you want it to be voice only? You don't have to.
I am not sure.
Okay,
That's
good.
why I pulled them out.
Okay, let's see, be seen, because I think it's useful when we can see real
What's the
views.
question again?
The real question is just simply introduce yourself briefly, and then I'm going to go into how the morning session is going to go. And the reason I moved back to Lorelei is because she's going to be taking notes. Irene's going to be taking notes. We're going to be putting things on the wall so that we can get our mindset around how this whole community problem is, how it exists. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Steve Thomas. I just moved here less than a year ago from New Hampshire. The homeless community is something to witness and monitor because of my work of property management and the fact they moved in behind where I was living. And I have a son in the community. You know, invited out here by my daughter, who's not homeless. But the truth is, like Lorelei was saying, the home is where the heart is. I'm interested in preventive measures, and I really admire what the community is doing, because we're not going to solve this with all these beautiful band-aids, let's be honest. We need to go deeper. And just briefly, I was very humbled when I got out here thinking I was going to save the bloody world. You know, nothing like the love of a father. You folks are further along than I imagined you were in a very short time. It kind of stunned me because I usually have solutions. So it gave me time to really get interested in what was happening in the community. So I'll be frank, they intimidate me. I don't have those issues. I have other experiences. Doesn't mean I didn't suffer, doesn't mean their suffering's any worse or greater. And I think that misunderstanding, hanging out with these folks, watching the so-called community treat them with throwing firecrackers and threatening cops, literally physically wielding hammers and knives, it's ridiculous. So my hope is that we empower through these bridges the community themselves to create their own leadership from within.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Would you like to speak or not? No? Okay. Is there anybody else in the room that wants to speak? Okay, then I'm going to go back and take center stage because that's my job, right? But in a minute, we're going to turn off the camera and we're going to just have a conversation. And the reason is because I want us to be able to put on the wall here, we're going to show how we're going to write, if I don't know if I can find the camera to find it, but solutions. We're going to write solutions down, like what are ideas, and they don't have to be 100% full baked solutions. They need to be pieces of information that if anybody on this call, on the line or in person here, has links that you've seen, projects that are going across the nation or around the world, raise them. And then I'm going to try to write down what I can that's in this room. I'm also going to do another one, which is the barriers that people face, because oftentimes people have no idea what's actually going on. Like I was talking to Lorelei yesterday and I said, well, she says, well, what do you want to hear about? And I said, well, tell us about what you're really doing. I mean, if you're going as a volunteer and you're going to somebody's camp and their feet are freezing because they fell in the swamp or in the muddy stuff, and they don't have clean socks. And she says, well, oftentimes it's not even that severe. I mean, that's a reality, but oftentimes it's the fact that you've been told to go to a particular facility to get help and the door's closed. And you just took 3 buses to get over there, or the buses aren't running and now you're homeless without any transportation, and you can't get access to the services because the COVID crisis just shut all the doors, shut all the bathrooms, shut all the transportation. You're not supposed to talk to people. You got to have a mask. I mean, there's so many barriers that are real that do exist in our society. And those people who are living in their homes, they have a car, they have a cell phone, they have car insurance, they can drive up to a Starbucks and get a coffee, a latte. They have a place to sleep at night, and they have an alarm to get up in them. There's all these things that most of us that are online and working in government, we have privileges. I mean, this isn't the privilege that is talked about in politics. This is real privilege, that you have things at your beck and call that you just take for granted, and you don't even realize that if you don't have it, you don't have it, and there's no way to get it. So that's why we're here today. We're going to be taking notes on another chalkboard over here. I'm going to do maps. I'm going to be drawing maps. So it is not my job today to moderate this whole conversation. I'm here to listen, and I'm going to expect people like Kasha, people like James. James, have you had a chance to introduce yourself? If you haven't, I'm going to have you introduce yourself in just a minute, because actually I'm going to have you help us moderate this call. Okay.
Okay.
And I'm just going to turn it over to you because I see you on my screen. And this is the most powerful person I know in this entire Pacific Northwest region to understand the issues that are going on. James is he's got 38 years working in downtown Vancouver, BC, and working with people on the east side, and working with people who are dealing with serious developmental disabilities, serious addiction issues, serious, Indigenous issues. And he's been helping people in BC for 38 years and has a huge amount of background. So I'm going to have James, Irene's going to be taking notes. Lorelai's going to be taking notes. We want to know times. We want to know schedules. We want to know problems. We want to know opportunities. We want to know anything you got to give us. We're just listeners here today. Okay. So James, take it away. Introduce yourself as I get set up. I'll be right back in a minute.
I think Beth wanted to say something.
I just wanted to share a short story that I was remembering this morning. About a month before I turned 9, my family took a train from California to Detroit to pick up a car to go to a family reunion in Massachusetts. I'd never been in a big city before, and I was holding my mother's hand and walking along, looking up at the skyscrapers, and I tripped on a can of pencils that was on the ground. And I looked down, and it was a person with no legs. And I was horrified, and I scrambled as a little child to try to pick up the pencils and put them back into the can. And I was horrified. We went to breakfast, and I couldn't eat. And when we got back to the hotel, I burst into tears and went between my mother's legs. She was wearing a calico striped long gathered skirt. And I went between her legs, and I just cried and cried, because I realized that that man had to do that to live. And so an awareness as a 9-year-old to understand why people do what they do, and like with homeless people, why they do these things, I think is really important for the community to understand, for them to be able to explain some of those things, why these things happen.
That's a hard one to follow. Very powerful. Thank you, Beth. My name's James White. I live in Vancouver, BC.
Yeah, no, the Wi-Fi connection is weak. So I don't know whether this is on. No, this is on our side.
We can hear you. Should I go now? Yeah, my name's James White. I live in Vancouver. I've been in British Columbia since 1973. I started working with individuals with developmental disabilities. Most of them have said to me, we don't like the dis in our abilities. Could you please change it? So there's some people who want to call it diverse abilities, like we all have. Anyhow, I was fortunate enough to be involved in working in the community living field as it's looked at, and help move people out of institutions who were incarcerated for being born different. And the doctors would tell families, put your kid who has Down syndrome in the institution, you can't raise him, all of that. So it completely devalued individuals. So I've experienced working with folks with homelessness who are people who have developmental disabilities, which is even quite an intense situation. Some of my folks that I've worked with, not my folks I've worked with, have been Indigenous, have been addicted, have been street entrenched, have been youth. So a lot of my experiences with people who are considered disabled mentally, through mental illness or through a developmental disability. The horrific stuff I've seen done to these folks has made me sort of keep working. I retired this year, but I have a small workers cooperative. It's a nonprofit, and it's 5 people with diverse abilities. And then there's 3 of us, as we call ourselves, supporters to help. And these people have lived experiences. Some have been homeless, some have had a lot of issues. And so I've just always loved doing this work, and have felt, you know, if you want to be accepted by somebody, it's not somebody driving a Cadillac. It's usually somebody who has experienced life in every way. And I've never been accepted more than I have by the community of people who are self-advocates or people with developmental disabilities. So it's just been in my heart. That's why I helped start a co-op, because they said, we want to take our lived experiences and go out into the community and share it with people. We want people with disabilities to not have to live some of the things we've lived, or at least give them tools to figure out how to get through this quagmire of being labeled. And as my one friend Barb said, labels are really supposed to be on jars, and normal is really on a drier setting. And so I'm just going to leave it at that. I've just done a lot of work, and I've been a bit horrified just in the past little while. The downtown east side has a big tent city. They went in, said it was a fire hazard, and they didn't even have anywhere to put them. They just started taking all their tents and everything. It's been pretty ugly, and now they're moving into different parts of the province. Anyhow, I'm really happy that I'm involved. Joy asked me to start working with people, and I just use what I have and the tools I have to see if I can help in any way. Thanks. So Joy, what shall we do now? Has everybody introduced themselves? Do you want to do that, Kurt? Your mic's off.
Yes, and I'm so happy that you said mic's off instead of some other ways that people do that. That honors people who cannot hear so well. And I'm a person who's here because of the Peacemakers circles and network, as well as the Peace Lab. And peace can only be happening when we treat each other with respect and love. And when we bring peace to life, when we bring that inner peace, which was talked about earlier. Without that inner peace, what good is life? So we teach all of that kind of stuff. We share all of that. We do what we can for anybody and everybody to be able to bring the love back to life. Thank you.
Joy, I haven't introduced myself yet, so if that's okay, I will go ahead.
Sorry, can I just interrupt quickly?
Of course,
Oops.
Alona.
Yeah, we lost the Wi-Fi signal. I've dialed back in on my cell phone now. And so none of the introductions were actually heard by the room inside. I'm outside at the moment, and they started to talk about the issues. So I thought I'm just going to move back in. So just that you're aware that there's stuff happening while you were talking.
Would it help if all of us, except the person that's talking, turn off our cameras? And just to help that we have Wi-Fi signal?
Yeah, it's not, yeah, as I said, I'm in on data now, not on Wi-Fi. So hopefully that's going to be more stable.
Okay.
Oops. Okay, so I've switched the camera off and I'm going back in. And so, yeah, I think then we will see how we move back into the conversation. So, okay, so we're back on, and what we're doing and what I just shared with the people in the room is that when I was a kid, I grew up on a ranch, and I learned how to be both prey and predator. It's not going to work. I don't know what you can do. Just do your best to record it. But the bike's going to slow down the time. No, of course not. I could. Okay, study changes. Any kind of... You okay? Hello, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know what happened just now. Did that come from my phone?
It sounded like
music or whatever the sounds. I don't know.
it sounded like it was Joy's, and that's why she turned.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. I'm just going to keep the line open and move around close. Actually, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to put headphones. No, that won't work either because you won't. Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to think on my feet here.
Do you have the ability to tether your phone to, like, there's a way to use your phone as the connection?
I mean, I could use my laptop as the connection, actually.
Yeah. Tether your phone to your laptop and try Zoom through that.
Yeah. Yes. I'm going to let it run. I hope the sound is there so that we get it recorded. And I'm just going to see whether I can get the technology sorted.
The sound through your phone is way better because the other way it was going in and out.
Right.
Oh, okay.
We'll just keep working. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, keep it up. You're doing a good job,
Okay.
Ilona.
Okay. Hang in there.
Frank, I noticed your hand is up. Do you have technical advice for Ilona?
No, I just wanted to reflect, mirror something that was said whenever it's appropriate.
So can you please all mute yourself so that I can bring the sound back into the room?
I am.
Or do you want to discuss
everybody's on mute now. I'll mute myself as well.
Okay. I remember when I first
two wheels on the bus. Then I had to go to into a house when we had kids, and because I was a teen on the streets, I didn't even know how to clean. I'm serious. I went from being a teen on the streets to being in a group home, to going and living in anarchy houses, to working with Greenpeace and doing environmental activism and stuff like that. So I was out in the woods, tying myself to trees and all that jazz. So I was out in the trees. Then going back out to hitchhiking around Canada and the States, and then down to Nicaragua, like just, in my bag was my home. but when I got into the house and I was a parent, I actually had to have somebody teach me how to clean. I mean, that's a real applicable thing of how on earth do I pay a bill? I didn't even know how to go to the bank. I had someone in AA had to teach me, this older guy, which he was just mansplaining me and just trying to take advantage of me. But I had to submit to him teaching me because I had no idea how to pay my rent. That's how vulnerable it is, you know. And I'm speaking to you guys. Y'all know I'm speaking to these guys who they're trying to learn this, right? So that's the vulnerability of being a female in that situation. Is all of a sudden you have kids and you don't know how to take care of a kid because no one ever taught you. I mean, my parents didn't. I don't want to be like them.
And that takes me into another idea or another thought that we have limited resources or limited housing. And we're talking about this setup of someone who's been outside transition, fast-paced life, always on guard, always changing, always adapting. And suddenly they get into an apartment. Okay, we have limited apartments.
Yeah.
This person is not comfortable in four walls. So instead of allowing them to be in a safe camping space, like what we saw with Homes Now, Unity Village, where they had inside of a community, outdoor camping, trash service, communal kitchen, communal toilet, transitioning into four walls.
Yeah.
We've got four walls that sit empty, that are paid for with federal funds, through Opportunity Council. Well, we have people in the woods dying, on the street dying, needing medical care, dying, because that apartment is taken by someone who is not mentally capable to stay within the four walls, but won't give up that security, but spends all their time outside. And so it's a wasted resource. And that person, there's nothing bad about that person and what they're doing. They're not intending to be selfish. They're not intending to waste that resource, but they can't mentally, emotionally stay in those four walls. And so that is a storage locker while they go from friend to friend, RV to camper, encampment to full camp, outdoors. And then the elderly woman who's in the next tent over can't get into four walls, have her surgery, or elderly man, his surgery, whatever the case may be, because we do have limited, and I'm using OPCO as the example here. We do have limited housing. We do have far more unhoused than resources available. So that's another challenge that I see. And it took me off of that statement that you said, Lorelai, about how the four walls is a trap for some people.
Around whoever is speaking.
Oh, is this the mic now?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, this is the mic now. So
we'll keep passing it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, well, no, the problem is the Wi-Fi. It's not the microphone. Yes, yeah.
If it's
well, okay. Well, what I'm trying to do is.
I would say like if the microphone works, put the microphone to the phone, and it should work.
No, that's a USB drive, so we don't have the.
Laptop, what I'm hearing you say is that the laptop's being moved around. In that movement and losing the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So if you leave the laptop.
Let him tell us how to fix it, because you know how to fix it. Can you just fix it? Come here, fix it. Okay, I'm just saying, fix it.
Yes, sir.
Raising my hand because I don't qualify to answer the question.
Good, don't follow.
So do you want me to bring the laptop back in?
If you want to bring the laptop back in.
And then John, if you can.
I have one.
You can send me that email. If you can forward me that email, I can get in and record to your cloud.
What affects
housing, yeah, whatever.
Housing security, food insecurity.
The email with the number to access.
Right?
So simply not wanting to be in four walls is one of those things.
Yes. It could potentially be, yeah. A person wanting the not wanting to be in four walls, but they want the freedom outside of Babylon. You know, and I don't know if I call that a barrier though. That's just a lifestyle choice. One of the barriers actually is the judgment of that lifestyle choice.
That's what I'm getting.
Yeah, it would be the people are being judged.
Like a professional doctor not being judgmental against someone home being homeless because they're homeless.
Yeah.
Law enforcement, just because they're homeless, being mean and threatening, that'd be a barrier.
Yep. Okay, so let me answer your question, because I think this is
right?
important. Yes, yes.
They're trying to
What I
identify.
want is to listen to anything that blocks solutions, anything, because what we tend to do when we've lived in businesses and you run governments, and when you do things, we want to put things in nice columns, and we want to put them in columns, and we want to say this is a barrier. Sabotage. So single words like this is useful because because the sabotage happens at multi-layers. It happens at cross purposes. It happens like one of the things that's passive aggressive and sabotage.
Resentful people would be another one.
Passive aggressive.
Resentful people.
Resentments.
Threats.
Threats. What was the first one that you said over there? Sabotage. Because, and then conflict. I mean, not knowing how to resolve conflict or just having repetitive conflict.
Violence. What do you mean by sabotage?
Joy, I would like to add something while you're putting this information up on the board, and it directly relates to, I didn't catch the name, but the person that was sharing about being put in a housing situation. Are you able, Joy, are you able to hear me? Joy? Ilona, are you able to hear me?
I just unmuted. If you could hold for a second, I've got a guy that's explaining sabotage, and I'm going to call you guys all guys just to get over it, right? So Debbie, can we come back to you in a second? Debbie is a person who's working with us, and she's got little ones that she deals with, and she may have to leave at any moment. And she's got something to share that I think is, you guys know Debbie David. She's been on the SOS Lounge. Okay, go ahead, Debbie.
Okay, this was directly related to the person who was sharing about being put into a housing situation and being a parent and not knowing how to clean because that never was modeled or taught to her. And one of the things that underlies all of addressing the needs to properly support and care for those that are homeless is the fact that without an assessment of where they're at with their ability to perform, I'm going to say the term, some of you will know what it is, but I'll also explain it. They're called ADLs, stands for activities of daily living. They include things like cleaning, being able to shop for and prepare your own food, be able to clean up after yourself so you're keeping your cooking spaces sanitary so you don't accidentally poison yourself, being able to toilet independently, being able to keep on a schedule so you make sure you have enough sleep at night, being able to set reminders, keep a calendar, make alarms. These are fundamentals of living that this tool is used here in the States, and it might be used in Canada too. I don't know, James. When an adult or a child is being assessed for home care aid support, which here in Washington is set up through State Department of Social and Health Services, that individual is assessed for where their functionality level is so that then their needs can be met through the support of the home care aid. This is an existing system that if we just go ahead and adapt and then modify if it needs to be less or more than how it's already functioning, we can just borrow that. It's like we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but we can, to me, this is like the transferable skills that I've talked in past podcasts that is taught through another program called Dependable Strengths. And I can get into that, if people have questions about that. but we have to go to what the fundamentals are that move beyond just shelter, because otherwise, if we don't address and do these programs, person-centered care, which James has alluded to at past talks too, person-centered care and highly individualized. Otherwise, we are just warehousing individuals, and that is not, first of all, healthy, logical, cost-effective, none of the above. It does not help us. So I hope I've explained that in a way that is understandable. If not, please ask me questions. But that to me is one of the tools we can use for solution.
So what I want to reflect back is that what I'm hearing is that we can use this in the street. You guys could use this yourselves to help it. We're not talking about institutionalized inside a government, create another barrier. People have to go fill out a form.
I thought maybe Debbie, you were saying plug people into that, because I had to stay off grid.
Yeah.
Because of my mental challenges and my choice to not take meds and everything. If I got on grid and applied for services and stuff like that, and I wasn't taking the meds when they diagnosed me and told me to get on to meds and all that kind of stuff, I might have gotten someone called on me as a parent with kids. I had to get done what? CPS, I guess, would have been called on me. And so I had to stay off grid as much as I possibly could. We homeschooled, we did all these kind of things, in different ways to make it so that CPS didn't get called.
So barrier then. Yeah. So the question would be the threat.
Right. And just to clarify, because I hear the concern was that I'm advocating for going into the system. Absolutely not. I'm talking about a tool that exists within the system that we can adapt to personal individualized needs. But what I'm saying is it exists, it's out there. All we have to do is, look at it, evaluate it for how it might support what your goals are, and then modify it accordingly. So hopefully that's more clear.
So I found it interesting that, this is why it's important to have these conversations, is because sustainable living people, environmentalists talk about going off grid. It's a phrase they know. So when you're speaking to people who are environmentalists and who are trying, they might be elite and they might be completely privileged. They might be working within the system, but they know the phrase off grid. They don't know the phrase off grid since you're living inside a city, inside concrete walls and jungles where you're not growing any food and there's nothing about ecological environment. But the key is learning to find these words that are relative. This is about building bridge to language, being able to talk to people who are different from you, but they have the same words, because in fact, off grid is the same thing. I don't care if you're wanting to go off grid to live on top of a mountain because you want to grow your own food and get away from all the EMFs, or you're living downtown and you want to stay off the grid of bureaucracy and systems and police because you don't want to be profiled.
Off grid for setup failure from other doctors and law enforcement and psychiatrists and DSHS. The list goes on. Yeah, that's where I get frustrated.
Yeah, I know. Once you're actually trying to change your lifestyle and you're getting in the system, because you need to do that, it's set up. You're totally set up.
Set up for failure is slapped me in the face for 30 years.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we're getting to with Bridge to Services, is that we've been doing this long enough now. We have some people who are actually in the system and they're starting to get connected. Like Bobby, if you don't mind, you're an example of that. You're at that level now where they're starting to get affected by the profiling. And it's and that's where I'm eager. I need to create some bridges to some people like yourselves, which I'm excited about this. How can we get people in the system that are cool enough to understand that we need you to use your power, your privilege, to benefit the people who are struggling? So yesterday when Bobby, when you hustled it to Walmart Kim, knowing that Thursday afternoons is service provider time, circle time, right? Whatever, and Grace was there, Lacey from Grace, a nurse, and you knew that. We had to connect, the relationship built to know, hey, Bobby's got to get out there. He got out there and he totally made the connect and got the card. It's like golden ticket, man. Those business cards are golden tickets because this is a person who heard your story and now you are a person. You have a connect, like, and Kate, you know, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but Kate's with the Ferndale Resource Center, but she did the winter shelter in Ferndale last winter, which was amazing. Do you know what I mean? And that's a connect. You're a power person now, just so you know. Do you know what I mean? You're in a position of power to affect people's lives. Yeah. And it's amazing. If they're bridges that are important and we need more. So that's what I'm hoping is happening with the people online and stuff like that. Be a person of power and use your privilege. Do you know what I mean? Use it.
Like one thing, like we've been looking at in so we started in 2001, and for 20 years we're 100% volunteer run organization, and we did the shelter was 100% volunteer, all this, but we kind of leveraged this crisis of COVID into getting a grant from the city because they had COVID funds.
Ferndale City?
Yeah, from the city of Ferndale. We got $400,000 to hire an executive director for, a number of years.
Sarah, right?
Yeah, Sarah O'Connor. We hired as our executive director. She's awesome. She was running the Goodwill employment, managing the region for that, like Seattle region, and had volunteered with us for 5 years. And when we got the money, we were fortunate enough to hire her. She's got her master's in social work and everything, so that's great. And then she worked and got money from the state, Washington State legislature to hire me on as a community resource navigator, because it's great when we can all come together and volunteer our time and everyone can put a little bit in, but people need to get paid for this work when they're doing it full time. Not trying to make, some insane amount of money, but I need to pay my own rent, because if I become unhoused also, then how am I going to run a shelter, So yeah, so I think that's an issue. And but we got, I'm all wrapping up, but we got this money because we put effort. Well, I was on the city council for 4 years. My stint of homelessness was during that time, and it was so bizarre feeling this us and them kind of talking those things and kind of explaining to people that, like, this is, there's people in this room like that are part of this group at the city level who go through these things. And I think getting people who have experience, I'm not doing council anymore, but we need to elect people, just the average person who has these experiences, because government it's the local government's not an evil thing in itself. It's just people working together. So if we get the people with these experiences elected, you can then get $400,000 to hire someone and make it a job and stuff. So I think, anyway, she just talked about people in power, and I was just thinking.
Actually, you're talking about something really important. When I ran for, that's very important.
James wanted to share.
Okay, I want to finish this thread though, because she's on something and I don't want to lose the thread, and that's fine. This issue of gaps, okay, we talked about it a couple of days, gaposis. I'm actually calling it gaposis. It's an inflammation of gaps. And it's an inflammation of gaps between generations, between privilege and non-privilege, between profession and non-profession. You experience the biggest gap there is as an elected official sitting inside the system. You're trying to talk to people, and you're trying to use language, and you're trying to convey something that they're afraid to look at. Okay, so they have language
that polarizes. And when I ran for Whatcom County Sheriff and when I ran for Whatcom County Executive before that, that was a gap. Okay. I had no intention of running for any of those offices. But what we discovered when we did that was a game that Irene actually, she came walking into my office one day and she came in and she walked in and she stumbled over and she leaned against the wall and she says, you know, we've been snookered. It's like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. You know, I mean, that's like, and I went, snookered? What the hell? She said, they tell you one thing and it doesn't mean what you say. It's this, they tell you this, but they mean that. And you don't even know. And the system works for the system. It doesn't work for us.
Denial possibility.
Huh?
Denial possibility.
Denial possibility. Yeah. Yeah. So this denial situation, it's like, you don't want to see it, but they don't also know what they're looking at. I mean, so there's a truth to the deniability. There's a falsity to the deniability. There's language gaps that we've got. And we started diagramming all the ways that there are gaps in our communication and why there's gaps. And so what you're pointing to, Kate, is really true because I was listening to you as you were trying to talk. And we were at the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force. And Irene was trying to talk to these people and they wouldn't even let her talk. I mean, they wouldn't let her speak. So let's let you talk for a second and then let's go back and hear what.
Oh, Cheyenne. Okay, share your hand for a while and I felt back.
Oh, no, I wasn't trying to shorten you. This is, by the way, we are right on the money here with what we're talking about, or right on the sore spot, or right on the whatever language you want to use, because we're finding language and we're finding behaviors and we're identifying problems. Go ahead, Irene.
Thank you. I just want to say how grateful I am to all of you who are showing up today. Because without your voices, no one is heard. I have been doing this work for 30 years or more. I have been the lone voice in many instances. So you are fulfilling my dreams and prayers. And I'm not going to apologize for my emotion because that's what gets us through this.
Amen. You're not alone, by the way.
I know I'm not. And that's, thank you. And I just want to say that what you're saying, Kate, is absolutely true. I have talked to, I don't know how many hundreds of people, and they just say, well, how's it going, Irene? Why don't you just go home and be a good wife? And you're just wasting your time. The ship has sailed. The train's out of the station. And I just keep going. It's wrong. What's happening to our society is wrong. And I've known it from the time I was, I don't even know how long. And thank God for my parents, because they taught me to, when I hear something, go to exactly the opposite and see what's really going on. And if we can all do that, and what I really wanted to say, besides thanking you all, is I have the public, and I don't want to disparage anybody by calling them the elite or the privileged. And I fit within that because I've been living on the same farm for 76 years. So I've got a very unique perspective of this county. And, but I don't have a lot, but I was raised to be frugal. So consequently, I've been able to stay on my farm and have the privilege that I do have. But what I do, and this is about as big a shoe as I ever wear. I go barefoot when I'm home. I love the planet. But what just from my own community, people do not understand what you have just been saying. So to educate the public that I'm calling the privileged, they absolutely don't know what's going on. And they think that you should know it. I just had someone the other day, I said, they don't know how to do it, or they would. And Lorelei, you spoke of not knowing how to rear your children, to clean your house. They don't get it because they had that training. I had 2 kids, one of each gender. They learned to do what needed to be done. I taught my son how to sew. I taught him how to do dishes. I taught my daughter how to go out and use a shovel and do the labor part that most women have been told is not womanly. You need to keep your fingernails clean and blah, blah, blah. So education of our masses is the most important thing. And that's what I knew when I first started the coalition, because nobody knew what was going on with the people trying to re-enter society from prison, from incarceration. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, one of the big shocks that I experienced, and we'll get back to you in a second, I just want to finish this thought because I'm privileged. I control the pen. But the first time I sat with somebody who'd come out of prison, and they talked to us about what they were dealing with to cross the barrier to re-enter, I had no idea the conditioning that happens when you're in there. This guy was absolutely terrified to open a door because he'd been told he couldn't all this time. He'd get in trouble. When I asked him why he didn't speak up when somebody told him no, he said, "You can't. The punishment is so high. The trauma is so deep. The conditioning, this guy had spent 10 years inside. So people have no idea that when you're totally and completely controlled by someone who can hurt you and who can throw you in isolation and who can do these things, we don't understand. I mean, it never occurred to me that you couldn't argue. And when we found out that there were people that were coming out of prison and they were coming out with prison ID badges for their license and a $40 check, and they were supposed to walk out of the prison with their face on a prison ID with the prison badge number on it. And they're supposed to go to a bank and ask the bank to give them $40 in exchange for the, I mean, what's the probability of those guys even making that happen?
They don't,
like,
some guys make it 5 minutes and go right back.
That's right. That's exactly right. They make it 5 minutes or 28%. So what we figured out, conservatively speaking, 28% of the people who come out never get out just because they don't have an ID and they don't have a way to get it. And guess who the one organization is who knows who the hell they are? The the Department of Corrections should at least know who they are, and they should be able to give them an ID when they come out of the door. And you know what they had just done? They had just built brand new computer systems, brand new ID badges that were safe for the Homeland Security people. And they were still giving them a green prison badge to come outside. And then they expected people to go to the Department of Licensing to pay $40 or $50 for their license when they only had a $40 check to start with. And there was supposed to be an email sent from the Department of Corrections to the Department of Licensing to tell them that it was okay to give this guy a badge. I mean, a driver's license or a ID. And Irene and I sat there and we're talking to these people going, how insane is that? Like how, I mean, that is a total shock.
You have a system set up for its own self and another system set up for itself.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Well, you want to,
somebody in that process at some point had to mean well because before that they didn't hear shit.
That's true.
Oh,
they
yeah,
were
no,
meaning
yeah,
well.
so,
but let me explain how worse it gets, because we're not even at the bad part yet. What the bad part is that once we raise the question to our state senator and to 2 of our state representatives and the Department of Licensing and the Department of Corrections to get them into a room to talk to us to solve the problem, I mean, to us, it's totally stupid. I mean, simply get a Department of Licensing person over there to give a license to everybody or an ID to everybody coming outside. I mean, that's simple. You know what it would have cost to solve the problem? $24,000 in a software programming. That's all it would have taken. You know how hard it is for a person in power or privilege to have simply signed off on a statement to do that, to simply write a new thing? That's what it would have taken. And you know what we calculated? We calculated that if only 28% of the people going in could get this problem solved, it would have saved us $2.8 million in that particular year based on the cost of incarceration. Minimum, it would have saved the taxpayers $2.8 million for a $24,000 fix. It would have taken a couple weeks to fix it, and we could have moved it over and solved the problem. Do you know what? I'm not sure still. It's still not there. They have created pilot programs. They've created task forces. They've created, all it took was $24,000. And you know why I know that? Because I was sitting in the room with Irene. We had the Department of Licensing head. We had the Department of Licensing, the DOC head programmers. And they told us specifically that that's all it would take. And it's been years and it still isn't solved. So when we're talking about bottlenecking and problems at the state level, at the federal level, at the lower level, we actually have to diagram all these things out to get to it. Yes.
And I'm interested. A lot of that kind of money is also padding somebody's pocket. It's like any dollars not accounted for that's being spent usually is. I mean,
so,
as far as like that's why it goes. That's why it don't get fixed. Right.
So one of the reasons that I don't talk about that very much in the system is because I've discovered that the money is absolutely going to different places, but it's legally going there. That's the thing that's interesting. It's legally according to law, because I've tried to fight the legal battles of some of these things, but the system works for the system. That's when we drove away from the office and Irene was driving down the street. She's banging on it because she said, it's not necessarily going to a person. And when we say that, it makes it sound like it's corruption, but it's not necessarily that kind of corruption. That kind of corruption went by the wayside 30, 50 years ago. Yeah. It's legalized misuse and movement of money. So that's why it's so difficult for us to talk about this and be safe talking about it, even in a room. You were trying to say something. Go ahead.
On the theme of, like, I mean, kind of feel like an outsider.
That's okay. Be one.
Because I've experienced prison, but I've never been without a roof over my head.
Okay.
Okay. Might have if I had been in prison. But this young lady has been trying to say something. We promised to get back to her. Yes. And I'm about to bully because I don't think this money thing is going to solve the problem. So
yes, go like this.
I just wanted to use my power and give the floor to somebody. Everybody do this. Barrier for her because
yeah, everybody's in any of these conversations. If I talk too much, go like this. Okay.
I have a few different kind of unrelated, all of this is related anyway, but thoughts that cross my mind in our conversation. So like try to bring them up. And going back to talking about why people are uncomfortable when they get that new apartment. I can't forget a conversation that I had with a woman down in Seattle who was so excited, was on a housing list for so long. I thought that's, hey, my life is going to turn around as soon as I get into this apartment and everything. And then she got it. And she was so incredibly lonely. She told me that the only way she could sleep in her apartment was to set her tent up on her living room floor.
I have done that.
So that,
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
Feel that normalcy, but also pretend that there are others in the room. You know what I mean? The tent in the room was like, it shut her eyes off to the empty room around her. Something I read in the book that I'll never forget. One of the longest studies on human life that we have, I believe it was Harvard, and they looked a really in-depth dive at I think 100 or 200 people's lives, from birth till death, and most of them had died, and they've continued this study, and it's changed and looked at different things as it's gone on. But a takeaway point that was just really eye-opening for me was they were talking about risks to our health. They said obesity, you have a 20% chance of dying early. Heavy drinking, 30%. If you are lonely for prolonged periods of your life, you have a 45% chance of dying early. That is the equivalent of 15 cigarettes a day.
While drinking.
Yeah.
Right. So then, yeah, then you add up the loneliness and then, you know, loneliness is only going to any kind of substance. You're going to try to fill that hole of loneliness. In America, I think that we're in we put a lot of pride and importance on this idea of independence that a lot of other cultures and countries around the world live in more community-oriented groups, whether that be families or, you know, small towns or tribes or whatnot. And I think that a lot of Americans have kind of like forgotten the importance of that. And there's also like a stigma around being able to say that I'm lonely. Yeah, absolutely. You know, because, oh, wait, is there something wrong with you? Why are you lonely? So it's like this huge thing that everybody experiences. No one knows how to say. And when we look at, okay, how do we fix and help people? Okay, we can help them with the alcohol. We can teach them food choices and we'll put them in an apartment alone. And they should be good, right? So that right there, I think one of the most beautiful things that I've seen and learned from just my like observation of street culture is the family networks that are created from people that are completely unblood related. The idea of sharing for survival. Like I came from a town of 600 people in the middle of nowhere, and it was a very tight-knit thing. My dad got in an airplane crash when I was 4, and the whole town had a big spaghetti feed to like raise money for my family for hospital bills. Like the more people you put together, the more you lose touch of that. And so I think one of the barriers to successful housing programs is they are designed by people who are completely out of touch with street culture and the importance of community. So that was like the thought that I had on that. Moving to what you were saying about people in this work should be paid. I worked for Youth Care in Seattle for a year. That's the largest homeless youth serving nonprofit in the Seattle area. And pretty much the monopoly only. Like there's a few, but like the main resource for anybody homeless under 25.
What is that?
It's called Youth Care. They have like 13 different like shelter group houses, like organizations, drop-in centers. It was heartbreaking to see an organization so big, it's been around so long, fundamentally failing our youth because they were not willing to, they're more interested in spending money on things that got them on the front page of the newspaper, like a brand new shelter, but like, are we taking care of the kids who are somebody local? And their case managers were not paid and all of the direct client staff were not paid a livable Seattle wage, which meant a constant 3-month rollover of like these bright-eyed new employees wanting to help and then being forced to escape to get a job that they're not really that passionate about but pays their bills. And the detrimental part of that is, especially when dealing with homeless youth who do not have like all of these adult support systems that they've ever been able to trust. And then we say, come here, we'll take care of you. And then you slowly earn the trust of a youth. And then like weeks later, oh, you have a new case manager. Exactly. And they don't want to explain start over. And so it is.
And it re-triggers.
Yeah.
But the re-triggers because
it
reminded me of my family, you know? Yeah. So, you know, that separation, my dad split, all that jazz, it brings all that back up and you go all raw. And what do you do when you're on the streets and you go raw? You don't stay vulnerable, dude. No, you bring it in and one more wall is constructed. And then it takes harder for people to come in and actually help you that want to care and help.
Yeah.
You know,
Could this be the mental illness factor that is slowly introduced? Because from the outside, looking in, clear, that's where a lot of fear comes, is people are unpredictable. Well, of course they're unpredictable. They're cornered animals. And yet we don't realize in our so-called privilege that we've cornered these animals. And as well as you mean, we're still political animals. When the going gets good, well, thanks for being there. We showed we were good people. I hear that. And I'm afraid for the community, frankly, because the hug is missing in this equation across the board.
And then my final thought on our incarceration system. I have kind of shifted, and like some people may agree, some people may not with this, but I have shifted from thinking about this as being a broken system of rehabilitating people to put it back on the streets to maybe this isn't a broken system of rehabilitation. Maybe this is a well-oiled machine to deliver slave labor to corporations. Yes. And so these cracks that people like fall into, like the cracks aren't accidental. The cracks are intentional. Maybe the people, not every single person working at the jail is like has that mentality, but people high up who make big decisions. As long as there is profit being made on jails being full, there will always be those cracks by design.
It's gonna be a revolving door.
Yeah.
At what point, how do we show them that we are being more organized to make them more scared?
Exactly.
You know, how
that's what we're doing here.
meetings like this. I mean, like how I mean, obviously we can't make people come, but we can show, like you were talking about how people for the youth people wanted to be on the front page, they went into shelter. Well, there's got to be some way that we can pull together to advertise that we're more connected than ever, that we're more, on the front page kind of thing, even if we're not in the background.
Yeah.
Social media.
Social media.
Which is what why Bridge to Services got started. To be honest with you, is because when we were doing the whole Camp 210 thing happened and all that jazz, and I saw how service providers were coming in and different things like that. It was like just kind of snowballed and went, and now it's evolved to where it's like I'm in Zoom meetings with opportunity council people. Like, and I'm like, Bridge to Services is a viable, we're a nonprofit, and we have every right to be in these conversations just as much as you. And I have to fight. We're literally trying to find ways to discredit us as non-professional because we're volunteers. Back to what Kate was saying. It isn't about me wanting to be paid for my position. I almost want to cry because it's like they put a price tag to whether I am important or not. Yeah. It is not about me being paid anymore. It's I need a paycheck so that I can sit at that table and say, I am a professional because I get paid. Yeah. So I can have a voice in circles where they're saying that. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional, but it's really pisses me off. Yeah. Literally 2 days ago, I was told this. They were like, there's gaps and there's all these things. And I'm like, we have volunteers. I was in a supply room in my work as a housekeeper in a Zoom on my ear, but I'm not allowed to be. Okay, I'm not supposed to be. I'm supposed to be cleaning bathrooms, right? That's where I get paid. Okay, but this was an important meeting to be so I can speak for people who can't come to these circles right here. So I'm going to risk my job. I'm going to do that, and then this person in a privileged position is going to tell me I'm not important. Are you freaking serious? Right. I'm more important than you, dude. I bet you have not been on the streets. I bet you didn't have to go sleep on some couch with some grungy old guy. Like all these things, like the positions you have to put yourself into in order to survive. Yep. Right. I wonder, and they're going to say it's because I don't get paid. That I wonder if there's something that we can do with the college where you can take not necessarily take a class, but where you can just have some kind of test or some kind of like something you write that will give you some kind of credibility. Yes. So for myself, as far as social media goes, I was thinking more along the lines of like rallies. Yeah. Because rallies really scare at least the middle ground, and that will go up. Yeah.
So, I mean, with the combination of, I never thought of social media, I don't use it that often, but that, I know how to talk to massive people, you know, and I know how to get them going, and I know how to march them. You know, you just use a little bit of truth and what you know people are going to have emotion about, and you got to guide it. Like, you just guide it from there. Usually you can do that with music, really easy. So, I mean, you march some people around and things, you know, usually does.
We can do fundraisers. So that whole rally idea, you know, disguising it as an appropriate society thing, right? Because when I hear rally, I'm thinking protest, you know, I don't know which is protesting, which won't go anywhere.
That's why I'm raising my hand.
Yeah. It won't go anywhere. Yeah. But how do we take that rally idea, because that's totally important, which is why I really am so grateful you guys are here. Because you have stuff to say, you have things to bring to the table, you know?
So,
and,
she's been trying to speak, and James has been trying to speak too. I know, and I want to acknowledge that what you just said is exactly what we've experienced. And I just wrote, just so you know, rally for fundraising and rally for compassion.
Yeah.
If it's not rally to fight against, but you rally to enroll, it's another way to do it.
My idea for housing for men was to like dress everybody up in women's clothing and say we have to be women for, you know, I mean, march around in that. People will look at that. You know?
Yeah. I got you.
Yeah.
Timmy, let's give them something to talk about.
Yeah.
We're gonna go down there.
Everything.
That hoop skirt in your basement, I can see it
So,
I haven't let my hair.
So have you been allowed to speak what you were trying to say before, other than to
There's a
interrupt
lot
it?
of people lobby, but he starts, I mean, this is what I'm waiting for, is you can bring the bananas to the monkeys and fish to a person, and it's been said through the years, but unless they want to take it, what's the why rather? So I'm encouraging this budding group. We're talking about action. We want to take action. In my limited experience, you need to be clear on your results. So we were talking about barriers. Barriers from what? Most of these people don't want four walls. So you made it clear we're putting square pegs into round holes. So what is it we really want? Why are we here?
Okay, I got it.
Okay, not everybody doesn't want four walls. A lot of people do want.
But generally
so we
speaking,
just have
people that are falling through the cracks have been abused by a system, don't trust the system, can't handle the four walls. So this conversation.
okay, hold on. He said something important.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that don't want the house. They want to be in the woods.
They want services.
They want services.
Yep.
They need a restroom. They need
garbage service.
Garbage service.
They need
a place
the opportunity to have their dignity.
Yeah. They need to be treated like a person and not an animal just because they're in the woods.
Or
and
that's what community is. That's where we can come together as a community and provide those services. And when you feel safe enough and well enough, then you can come into a bigger circle that will support you even more. And that's what my vision has always been. We have been encouraged and conditioned to think we all belong in a separate housing and stay separate. And I need my space. We spoke of it earlier. And that's, like someone over here said, that's not the way it's done in the rest of the world, but that's how we have been conditioned in our society. And since I have the floor, I want to say that everyone that I have ever talked to, without exception, in having a job in the system or out of the system, has said the system is broken. And I love your attitude, because I've known this for a long time, but I haven't been able to say it. And she's tried to shut me up so many times, and I'm tired of being shut up. So thank you for saying
she's saying it in the wrong spot. I will.
There's training again.
I did it. That's right.
And so community is number one, to support each other and to have that we need to be able to not just survive, but to thrive. And the one thing that I have seen, and I said just yesterday, it's a vast loss of human potential that breaks my heart. And our indigenous and our colored have experienced that. I mean, there's only, of course, people have called me all kinds of different nationalities, but I only see one native here. And bless you all, because we all have the same colored blood. We all have the same faculties, and we are one. We are human, exactly. And we belong together. So, and I know there are wonderful people with big hearts that work in the system, and the only reason they're there is because they spent a lot of money getting their degrees to be able to get their dream job, and not knowing what was really going on until after they got inside. That will drop their uniforms in a nanosecond to come and help with this progression, this movement. Mm-hmm. And I have been, it's true. It's true. Yeah. So I'm very excited. You can't know how excited I am. And I just would like us all to take a deep breath, because there's so much coming out here. Thank you so much for all that you're doing. And just take a deep breath. And then on the exhale, just let all this tension and chaos go. And take another breath. And let it go. And the dog is saying, what's going on? I'm going to pass out.
And the dog's like, what do you smell?
So he wants to say something, and James has been waiting to speak. So go ahead.
I have a really strong feeling that we're missing somebody here. We're missing a perspective here.
Yes.
Yeah. The clerk that hates homeless people.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. You know, I had actually entertained inviting somebody who I knew.
Someone who dislikes the community.
But at the same time had total prejudice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, but I think that might be the next move.
That's
like
the
I
next bridge we got.
I wanted to bring us together and support each other first, and then
I
have several people I can invite that I know they're totally all about sweep them.
Yeah. So you see, if the perspective that holds is only the best understood by that person. Yeah. We can only perceive what they feel about it. I mean, I know I'm the only one that can feel my side of things wholly.
But why would you agree that if they don't let us know, we fill in the blanks?
Yeah. We have to make it up for ourselves, just like they do with us.
So
how feel like someone like that, I feel as if someone like that is hateful or combative towards someone who just needs to use the restroom and they got to go behind the dumpster behind the store that they're working at.
I think a good middle ground there is like instead of looking at we're homeless people like one of the most beautiful things I've experienced being homeless was 2 years being in the woods and looking around and in the morning, waking up in the morning, looking around, and I knew I couldn't hear any voices. I couldn't see anything that was out of the ordinary, but I could feel the trees talking to each other. Mm-hmm. I had the animals that came up to my tent and expected me to have things for them. Like there's community, that communion with nature that people will never have because they are not in the woods. Right. And I think that if you can look at that point of view and bring that point of view to the table and that perspective might help bridge the gap there.
Go ahead.
I mean, I can't fill that gap that you're talking about, but I can fill another gap. I said I'm German, and everyone knows Germans used to be Nazis, and we used to kill. No. And there's 6 million Jews that got killed because of what Germans did. And when I was a little girl, I tried to understand this. I couldn't understand how human beings can do something like that to each other. And I spent my entire life trying to figure it out.
Because they were told.
No, not just that, because they were scared.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
The thing is that what you need to realize is the privilege, when they look at you, see their worst fear in front of them, because they are so scared of losing that privilege, because that makes them feel safe, and it's everything that makes them feel safe, because they have never realized that once you lose it all, you gain a freedom that they can't even imagine. and that you don't really want to trade in for being a robot in the system.
Right.
And so within the system, they are not allowed to see you as humans because then they can't function anymore. And once they see you as a human being, they need to do something about it. You can't look the other way.
No, you're either helping or you're making it worse.
Exactly. But for that person, it's easier to look away and judge you than to actually realize the humanity in you, and then they can only help because that's who we are.
So I want to do a quick break because Kate's leaving, and I want to pick the last of that up, and I still want to get back to James because he's sitting here waiting. Go ahead.
Yes, Joy, if you would mute your microphone when James speaks, that probably will be wise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Kate.
So, well, I have an appointment at noon up in Ferndale, so I'm sorry I have to go, but I don't have business cards yet, but I have these fundraiser flyers, speaking of fundraiser. This is our first, I put my name, phone number, email, and everything on back. So if anybody here is in a position to pay for a $20 ticket to come to our fundraiser, that would be great. We also do free open houses where we do the same kind of thing. This is our first fundraiser because we're trying to get those people with money. So, but anyone can contact me on there. I'd love to tell you the shelter, the resource center, which you heard about from me today, are just 2 of our 10 programs. We've got free clothes, we do hygiene supplies, we do a holiday giving store, we've got a bunch of stuff, community garden, where we do thousands of pounds of food to the food bank every year. So what's the name of your group? Ferndale Community Services. And the resource center is, so it's up on 2nd Avenue in Ferndale. It's in the same building as the, their city hall annex.
I know where it is.
Okay. Come by, I'm there 5 days a week now, and I would love to talk to anybody that needs assistance, anybody that wants to collaborate on things, volunteers for the shelter, all kinds of stuff. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and hopefully through Lorelei, we can get some other people's info and looking for volunteers for the shelter. And we're also looking to get the word out to people that need a place to stay, that maybe the drop-in center doesn't work for them. We're just like a little church up in Ferndale. So I'm sorry, there's so much to say. And I'm like,
so Kate,
I wanted Kate to come so that there would be a face to the winter shelter in Ferndale. Really, honestly, that was my main goal. And that you're just awesome. Yeah. But that, so in the camps, if people are like me and we're saying, hey, there's a Ferndale shelter, somehow we're going to try to get volunteers to drive. We're not sure how that's, but we know transportation is the hardest.
So Kate,
legit cool up there. Yeah.
I would really love to do an actual interview for you on I Change Justice and to ally with you. One of the hardest things we've had as a coalition is finding people who wanted to ally with us, because we can put people in danger because we protect criminals, but that's what we do. And so we've been ostracized and marginalized and pushed out for 16 years plus.
I want to say too that we have deliberately not taken federal state monies because the bandwidth is so narrow and we can't really help people, and we will not put people in jeopardy, as you all have experienced.
So I don't want to get off on a dog trail. I just want to say that, Kate, we would love to work with you. Yep. We would love to hear more about you. We would love to be able to put your stuff up on the Restorative Community Coalition and list you as an ally. The same with any of the rest of you guys. And I just realized that we have an unexpected resource here, folks. It never occurred to me that what you guys have is boots on the ground. Guess what you guys do? You walk all over town. When you have a flyer and things that need to get posted, guess what? You got a whole army of people who can post and flyer and put stuff up all over the place. You have to do it carefully, and you have to know that you're not creating a big mess. But it's like we can look, when we start to look at our real resources, we've got resources that are hidden underground here that we never thought about using as resources. And before you leave, Tate, I want to really honor you and say thank you for being willing to run for office and put yourself out there when you had nothing to work with. That is incredible. And you have knowledge that most people never got because you were sitting in those places. And I want to thank you for that. So you gotta
I
go.
would love to give you all the advice and assistance in the world because I am in a privileged place too, and I know that
Let's
there
do
are
that.
different voices we need to reach.
Yes,
out, so.
let's do that. I'm actually going to write that down as people running for office, building a new collaboration. Now, James, that's
James is going to speak, but I need to tell you guys something very important. If you are sitting in the room full of people and you are moving chairs, doing something that, I don't know, with the papers and some other things, your microphone is picking up all the noises and it's kind of annoying on our end. It might not bother you, but please be aware of that. So James, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. What she just said was that if you're going to open up the bags and stuff, do it outside so that we don't have as much noise messing with our recording. That's okay. Go ahead, James.
You know, I was going to speak about a half hour ago, and then all this powerful stuff was discussed. But I'm thinking I'm going to take it back a little bit when people were talking about the system and how to get into the system, how they try to put you in a system and then they expect you to do this or that. And one of the things that I've done, I have a nonprofit cooperative, which is 8 of us. And like I'd said before, 5 of the people are identify as self-advocates, people with developmental disabilities who choose to advocate for themselves. They've learned how to teach a workshop called person-centered planning, which Debbie talked about. And a person-centered plan isn't a plan that the system does for you. It's a plan that you do to show the system what you need, want, what's important to you, what's important for you. I could go on for ages about it, but it's a 2-day workshop and it's actually taught by people with lived experience. So the 5 individual folks that have developmental disabilities are teaching it, and I just support them to do this. And it's a tool that they use to go to the system, because what's happened to them for many years is they have a social worker or a coordinator or whatever, and they basically sit there and say, well, you need this to be healthy and safe, and you need that, you need to know how to do this and that. And we used to call it the old way of planning and the new way of planning. But we've changed it now to when the system does a plan and sort of forces on you, it's considered power over. And so we don't like that term. We want a plan that's person-centered, and it's called power with, which to me means power with the plan I have to show you what are the important things to me, which is the stuff I love in my life that I want, and what's important for me. And it's a balance, which are the things I need to do to stay healthy and safe, to be able to balance those. And then it goes into, it's 2 days of just digging deep into what do you want, so that when you do go to this system to look for services, you already have something in place that you share with them and say, this is what I want, instead of them sitting there in a room helping you do a plan and telling you what you want. It isn't about what they want, it's about what you feel is going to make and build your life in a better way. It helps you, because what I found when I worked in the system for years was that people would try to tell everyone, as I said, what's best for them. And they were always doing it in a more medical model, which is healthy and safe, which completely ruins the whole thing about a quality of life and that the passionate things you have, because, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't skydive, you could die, or you can't do this or that, you could die. Well, no, it's this is what this person wants. Let's support that person. Let's have the person have the ability to come into a room ready. Because if you don't go into that room ready, if you're going to be asking for services and you don't quite know what you want, they're going to start telling you what you want, and that becomes that power over aspect. We want it to be power with. So you go in there. So we teach a 2-day workshop to help people develop their own person-centered plans. So they're ready to go in if they're ready at some point in their life to say to the system, I want some stuff. And then they go in with a roadmap already set up for themselves and what they want in their lives. That's what I wanted to add. And then I lost everybody.
No, we're back. Yeah, we're back, and we are trying our best to be quiet and not make too much noise in the room. And just so you know, the people moved up closer to the thing, so we're touching some buttons here, which is really cool and good. And
did you get any of what I said?
I can.
Yeah, we all heard what you said, and what I want to say is that James is working with us. And he's more than willing to come down and work with us both at the tiny home villages and any camps. If you want to build a real team, we can do it. He may not be able to come here physically, but we can also do it.
No, my government's not allowing me to, because I'm one of those non-vaccinated people, and I got in trouble once already. I went down and spent time with Joy and got spanked by my government, but that's okay.
I'm sorry.
One more comment, Joy.
Hold on. Let me finish this thought, guys. What James can do with us is that I can offer that if we wanted to hold a meeting here and bring a bunch of people together, we can actually host a meeting and he can walk us through it by video. Like we can do another Zoom call. We can do it in the office if we can do it. We have problems getting signal here, so I can't have the front door, but I can promise you we got 4 exits. So you can get out of here. What else would you like to say? You want to speak?
No, I'm just saying we can get a little speaker that we all can hear. That's my problem. I couldn't hear anything.
You got a Bluetooth in your car? Yeah, so we could do it at a meeting. We can do it outdoors. How fun is that?
You want it right now?
Sure, please.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. I got a nice one too.
Okay, what else wanted to be said, Kasia? Because I sense that we must be running out of time.
Okay, so right now it's 11:45 of our time.
Okay, then we're fine. But go ahead, Kasia. Who wants to speak?
So I want to just add one more thing. It might be also helpful if you pass the phone from the person to the person who's speaking. So don't speak at the same time, but just pass the phone, like a microphone. And right now we have Rose who's raising her hand, and she would like to speak.
Okay, Rose, go ahead.
I would just like to ask James how the system responds when he brings the power with, and what the people have worked out to the system. How does the system then change and meet their needs?
Well, the system is actually asking for people to come more prepared because the systems actually that I worked with, this is for people with developmental disabilities, has opened up a lot more, and they're embracing what we do now because they find that they've done years of trying to tell people what they want, and it's gone sideways in certain situations, whereas they've noticed a change when somebody comes in and says what I want, and then they're able to help them with their housing, with employment, with whatever, and it's what they want. Things change completely to when it's what they tell them they want, and then you get all kinds of issues. So it's been they want that because they've experienced so many failures when they didn't have it, that they said, we need to try something different. So we introduced our co-op to them, and they basically gave us a grant to start doing this throughout the whole province. So we've been fortunate in British Columbia to have it accepted by the community living, the people who fund folks with developmental disabilities. But it took years to get it to that point.
Well, thank you, though. It's wonderful to hear that something practical is working.
Every now and then it happens.
Sure. Lorelei has something to say.
That's something I wanted to point out was the reason why I was saying I can't really chocolate, but something I wanted to point out was that I'm Canadian. So when I was unhoused, it was in Canada. The services in Canada is completely different than the services down here in States. It's so what I'm hearing is that the system was open to what you were presenting. They're not here in Whatcom County.
I've been trying, like we've been trying to connect up with the services here and go, hey, we have volunteers that are willing to go out. You know, you don't even have to pay us. We'd love it, but hey, we don't even need to be train us, you know, or we'll train you. But they're not open to it. So how do we now? That's what we're trying to discuss is how do we as a community do it anyway?
We need booths. We need, I can't speak with something. I get nervous and I'm, we need some source. Thought in my head is a booth. A homeless, information booth.
Yeah,
basically
like a kiosk.
Service booth.
A
Kiosks.
yeah.
But these are not high end like electronic. You know, it's a booth with papers that someone that is on the street sees it. Oh, hey, some services I can get.
Yeah.
Okay.
What you get
the fastest and easiest way that anybody can do it. You don't have to be special. You don't have to go through a line of people. You have to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
You got phone numbers. You got places you can go. You got things that you can do. It's simple.
Yeah.
And they have to be everywhere.
Yeah.
Like a light pole on the street. Every street needs a booth.
Like the neighborhood libraries.
Exactly.
Oh, we could do that at neighborhood libraries.
But
if we figured it.
Is even
yes,
I totally agree. Even though when they go there and they call and everything like that, for instance, the Tuesday feed, I go there and that the bucket boys give me their leftover food that's left over.
Yeah.
I witnessed a single mom. She used a last bit of her gas to get there to feed her kid that was with her. It closed because somewhere on that piece of paper, it said 5:30 and it actually started at 5. So that's the problem too.
Yeah.
Is the disconnect between the paper and actually what's going on. The miscommunication among all of the systems. How do we have to deal with that barrier? You know,
yes.
Read on the light post and whatever and all that. If the system isn't going to work together with the services, there's no point. We need it's at the point of the system. So like we need to create a new create our own.
So there's actually obstructionism that happens. That I'm really, I want to say that I get it that we're starting to move around and we're probably going to be ready to.
It's hard to hear your voice. Are you covering your microphone or something?
No, we're connecting to another mic. Just a second. Okay.
Let me just speak to. We don't need this on the way. So
okay, so
okay. What we will do as an organization is we're committed. We have been committed to listening to what's going on. We're going to take, just so you know, before some of you leave, that we're going to take information off this wall. And what I've been listening for and what I've heard multiple times is there's miscommunications. There's communication differences because people have different points of view and perspectives. We're going to take this information. We're the whole reason that Lorelei invited you here is because one way to get information to people who don't understand what you're talking about is written material. And so there are some notes here you guys can take, but we're going to make a report and we're going to put it online. And then it's not a report as in a report card. It's a report of where there's miscommunication, where people who don't understand what other people are doing. There's miscommunication with language. There's all these different miscommunications and systems that there are many people who want to help. And then they're being manipulated by social media that is actually winding people up, like business people in town, these clerks in the store. I want to address those things. A lot of it's because people don't understand. And like she said, they're afraid. So over the next few months, one of the things we would like to do is to be able to communicate with you, invite you to come in, talk to us. We have handout places. We've got people who can provide information in some places. So I just want to say that, and I want to invite you to have this. Then Irene has put together here this piece. Yeah, feel free. Go ahead and talk about your piece is possible.
Okay, I have known for decades, my parents, thank God, taught me about there being a different US flag. It's the United States peace flag. It hasn't been flown since the 1930s. And the reason is we haven't been at peace. The United States has been at war with someone. This is the peace flag. Notice that the stripes are going the opposite way. That's what denotes the peace flag. The stars are blue on a white background. And this is a fundraiser, but I'm offering anyone that wants a peace flag today, along with the bumper sticker that I designed, Peace is Possible. I believe that when the public gets it and knows that there's a movement going on, that it will spread like wildfire. So anyhow, I thank you. I've been again dissed for doing this because it's just not possible. I mean, the peace isn't possible. Well, peace is possible. Let's do it. So, yeah, you betcha. You want more? Share?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think it's beautiful that you brought this. I promoted the thought of what are the results we want.
Mm-hmm.
What will I open up with? Wants peace. Wants people to have peace with themselves.
Yep.
Correct?
Yeah.
And I was encouraged to speak up, and I want people to feel empowered to lead their own lives. And so when I walked in, in Walmart the other day, someone who didn't know me helped me find my son walking around. The first words out of his mouth, yeah, we want to clean this up, get some garbage cans, and trash cans. I mean, there's action people want to take.
Yeah.
So I have to go because I've employed a couple of men today to go take some work action, but I want to stay connected.
Awesome. So I want to point that out, that so Steve is actually providing work for people. Like there was that program you were talking about, like, people can go to work and all that kind of stuff. Steve's actually doing that in action, creating space for,
I mean, I'm literally one illness away from being in my truck.
Yes.
I mean, it's that tight. And I'm not the only one in this preposterous position. I'm out there supporting you guys being present in the community and being available, and I'm getting firecrackers thrown at my ass. No, that's got to stop. Yeah, that simply has to stop. If for no other reason than children in our lives, particularly the ones within us, myself included, that are still hurting from whatever that was. Okay. So I'm sorry I have to leave early. Thank you for letting me hog a little bit more time.
So let me invite you that as a person who is working with,
thank you.
This is really crazy, but I'm going to say something that's really inappropriate. He's a white male.
Toothpaste commercial right here, right here.
Right. So a white male in our society does carry a certain amount of authority. Just because, okay? Now, one of the things that's delicious about this right here is that our coalition has been striving really hard, and we have not been allowed to speak many times. We've been kicked out of meetings. We've been shut down. I mean, even though we're nice, and Irene's been shut down even when she was a task force member.
Yep.
But one of the things that we concluded from doing a lot of this work here is that we're going to build coalitions, small coalitions and pods of people, and coach and train ourselves. How do we speak and how do we work together to do different kinds of projects? Because it is absolutely unsustainable where we're at.
Absolutely. That's why
I mean, it's completely unsustainable. So we must team together. We would invite you to come work with us. We are on the website, so you guys can join us, and we're going to do different kinds of meetings, and we want to gather more information, and anybody can come to us and bring your thoughts and ideas to us.
Have you decided or talked to like a law school or
yeah, let me go to that in a second. I want to finish. Yeah,
There's
that's
a whole menu
other
of
service.
educational opportunities that
Yeah.
have to listen to me today. But before I go, I got to tell you, you folks, the Dorian, Chris Bob, I'd sooner hang out with you all day long. In whatever circumstances you find out what is interesting to you, and to hang out with your own freaking family. Okay. It's just words, but if you know me, you know that's true. So whenever you think one split second, maybe I don't deserve this. And give it to yourself anyway.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, that's all I got. That's the thing that keeps me from that 1 week away. You got this. We got your back, and we're going to make this happen.
Many people are one ticket away.
Yeah. Please email me. So if my son made some notes, you know,
Pleasure to meet you.
Thanks for having the courage to come today.
Besides for being, you know, in the higher power. We're in business.
Yeah.
That love is within.
We are capable. Thank you all.
Thank you guys.
Everybody have a good day.
I'm not done.
It's going to be so much better.
You're not here with nothing. You guys are, you're not that point. Thank you. It's my business partner right there, Bobby.
Right here.
Oh, Bobby, you guys, you got one of these?
So I want to share that some of this stuff, if you look at it, the word violence is on here because what I figured out in the last couple months is that violence is a pattern and it's a habit pattern.
It's the worst one.
And violence can be broken. There's patterns to violence. And we figured out these 5 patterns to violence that we repeat because we're conditioned to repeat it in a dominator system. And we can reverse, we can change the patterns to change the habits, to change the behaviors. Okay. So thank you.
I will be in touch.
Okay. Thank you so much. So come back to the lawyer comment.
Yeah, I'd say that there are 2 things I wanted to comment on that.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, the 2 things I wanted to comment on that. Like, is I've been trying to advocate with him with Social Security, and we found out that, like, you know, law schools have lawyers that are needing hours and work in on these things. And I'm sure that there's a spot for nonprofit organizations that. And all we would need to do is reach in a couple people who feel passionate about it. And you might be able to get a little bit further in these meetings you have, you know what I mean? When you have the ability to smack somebody's hand.
Yeah.
Smack somebody's hand.
You know her.
It's better to use the law the way it is, but rather be broken or back for yourself and your cause than it is fighting for on. You know what I mean?
What I didn't know, do you know who or where the lawyers that, I mean, do you know anything about her contact for people who need to get training? Because I'd like that contact. I've been looking for pro bono lawyers and it's tough.
Like we were just told that I called 3 lawyers for his Social Security, and they all referred me to law school. So I mean, like you didn't call the law school like you did, and you just started asking questions, and one person took it down and call another number.
In other words, you're doing it for research. The biggest law school
Yeah, I mean, we only had to call 2 numbers before we had 4 lawyers on the case. So I mean, you know, like the only thing that's stopping us right now is us finding the paperwork, and that's from us moving forward. So I mean, law schools are a great opportunity.
Okay.
I can sit here and do this kind of looking up stuff that you might do like that all day long. You know, I don't mind that.
So you're a resource for research.
Well, I'm a boomer. I grew up in Las Vegas. I grew up on the strip, working on the strip. I've seen millions of people all day long, all across America, all across the world. Come in, we come and go, and it is the best of the best there as far as when it comes to home and whatever. It is what it is. It's giving me a set of skills, and like I said, I know how to move a crowd of people.
Oh, good.
Know, it really comes from just within yourself. You know how you feel. All you gotta do is communicate that, and you're good.
So make sure that we have your name and phone number and email, because one of the ways that we know that we can change things is with humor. And we can also change it with music, like you pointed out. And we can also change it with theater. And there are some of us who want to be able to learn how to speak these messages in stand-up theater or one-man shows or short skits that can go on social media. We need people who have artistry skills, who can help us write up cartoons that are, everything that we're up to is not about adding to the violent story. It's adding to the compassion story. It's adding to the love story. It's adding to the appreciation. We have been battered long enough. We've been battered for 800 years. It's the eyes that we're looking through, but we need artisans. We need people who can volunteer and do these things. I mean, just noticing, it never occurred to me to ask people who are wandering around the streets to put up posters. I mean, how stupid is that? It's right in front of my face. You're right there. People are right there. They can do this. But we need that kind of help sometimes.
Those things cost money. Yeah. And outside of the money situation, because a lot of people just don't want to work it out.
Yeah.
So there's ways to get that money without having to do that. There's fundraising.
Yes.
But there's also grants.
Oh yeah, it's grants. I've been learning about lately.
You know, if we got a quality, good enough grant writer, we can get money.
Yes.
Without having to take out of somebody's pocket, especially those that are homeless that are getting the
I totally get it.
That they need from this coalition. Yeah.
Especially there's a lot of people who do have a lot of money and they don't know where to throw it.
Yeah.
And right now I've been reading a lot about which, some people, I don't know if everybody knows it or not, but we're going with like this financial thing in America, like it's just totally like a wash. I mean, you might as well just get $1 to buy it, and by the end of the year, you're looking at $50 a gallon by the end of the year. You're looking at total what they're calling social unrest, which means that it's going to start with rolling blackouts all across America. It's going to be ugly. It's going to have martial law. It's going to fail eventually because oil and the policies on oil are stupid. I mean, like, it's going to take us 20 years to get to where we want to go, but we're going to stop all production of it anyways.
So one of the things that I want to consider here, because that's one of the arguments that we've had, and what we do is we continue to tell the story that everything's going to go down when in fact, and I'm not opposed to the argument and I understand it, but over the period of time, what I've learned is that it is as important and in fact more important that we imagine that it is in fact possible to stop those behaviors and to change those behaviors. And we can actually turn around. That's one of the reasons why Alona was here. We can do it individuals, but what we're wanting to build is teams of people to learn how to do it differently, how to communicate. Let me finish. How to communicate it differently, how to spread the positive good news differently, and how to create a virus infection that is towards peace, towards solutions. And one of the things that I just figured out from you, what we could do right away, in fact, is bring a small team of people together that you guys are associated with, that know the problems that we're dealing with, and build a small team that is intended to learn how to write grants.